Big Sills National Football Show. Welcome aboard. Where the news never ends. The news never ends. Can I make a statement without anyone using the term flip-flop here with anything when it comes to Jalen Hurts? I got to tell you, man. So there's some folks doing a mural now in Philadelphia with Jalen and thanking him for the season, that enjoyment he brought to Eagle fans and sports fans in Philadelphia. And I think it's really cool. Can I tell you who it reminds me of? It reminds me of Kobe. He's got a lot of Kobe in him. I mean, Kobe's revered. Jalen's revered. I'm talking personality here. I'm not even getting into contract yet. I'm not talking about anything other than how people look at him. It's like Kobe. The people in Philly love him more than Bryce Harper, Joel Embiid. He might go down as one of the most revered athletes in Philadelphia sports history. I mean, when people look at Kobe Bryant today, I think people today, and I think the true testament of Kobe Bryant is that Kobe's aura and his legend is growing more and more and more after his passing. The Mamba's bigger to me than he ever was. Jalen Hurts answered a question about contract talks exactly the same way Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant would answer it. Today's not the day. Today's the time to reflect, to get better, and then there will be a time for that. Do you know how important that answer is? Instead of doing this, look at Kobe Bryant / Jalen Hurts' response on what he learned from the Super Bowl, and then put that next to how Aaron Rodgers is dealing with the Packers. Hey, once I get out of my cave, I'll let you know what's up. You know, with all the faults that Brett Favre has, all the faults he has, he'll be more revered by Packer fans than Aaron Rodgers will ever be. You know why? He's relatable. I think the true magic to guys like Brady and people like Muhammad Ali, you're relatable. You know why? Because you touch everyone. You don't just touch half a locker room like Carson Wentz. You're relatable to everybody. Failure, success, underdog. People that represent cities. Tony Gwynn was awesome for San Diego. Humble, yet great. Rip it. I mean, when you look at the way Cal Ripken fit right into Baltimore, it was a match. Jeter, New York. Jordan, Chicago. You know what I'm saying? It's relatable. Failures and successes. I'll say this to you. I saw that mural on the sports page of the Philadelphia Inquirer this morning, and I'm going, man, I'll tell you what, even in a loss, they love this guy. Even in a loss, they love this guy. And now I think it's more profound than ever. He's got a lot of Kobe Bryant in him. You see, the money will come. The winning is what drags the money along with you. If you love what you're doing, the money comes. Trust me when I tell you. You know, I've never made a cent doing something that I hated. But things that I love, I've done well. Just when I don't really think of Michael Jordan. when I think of Jalen Hurts, I think of Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality. You know, I saw that mural and I go, man, can you watch this? Kobe in Philly would have been 10 times better than Kobe in LA. Laker fans didn't deserve him. They didn't deserve him. But he probably went to the right franchise because the Laker franchise with Dr. Buss when he got there with Jerry West was all about winning. Mitch Kupchak and them dudes, all them guys cared about winning. Now, the apple's fallen far from the tree. Look at the Lakers over the last 10 years. It's not a destination for winning. Outside of the Disney trophy, it's really not been anything, has it? Jeannie Buss and the brother has destroyed what they built there in Los Angeles. It's not the same. They're going through some of their worst losing seasons since they moved from Minneapolis. Laker fans love Kobe. I'm not saying they don't. But I'll tell you what, man, Eagle fans, they absolutely love Jalen Hurts. And even after that loss, even after that fumble, there's more reverence for him now than him even going into that game. Kudos to him. One of the greatest things that he does and one of the greatest things that he has established, he can connect with everybody. And I think that is the Tom Brady golden road in the yellow brick road to success. Remember something, I told you this before. Brady used to put the biggest problem childs around him and put their lockers right next to him. Aaron Hernandez, Antonio Brown, the running back from Cincinnati, what was his name? Cedric Benson. He put all the hammerheads right next to him because he knew he needed them to win. There's something about Jalen that makes you root for him. That mural, I think this stuff's only going to get bigger. It's how he conducts himself, how he answers things. Jalen Hurts has been trained his whole life for this moment in his life. And he's taken full advantage of it. He's not letting anything slip through his fingers now. Because you know why? It slipped through his fingers in Alabama. He learned I think he learned more from that Alabama experience than anything he could have ever learned in his entire life. I think the two most profound moments in his career was losing the national championship game and losing the Super Bowl. Because it's fuel on the fire. Corey Dillon. Thank you, Chris. That's the guy. Corey Dillon. Absolutely. Kudos to him, how he's handling himself. All right. I want to make sure that I underscore a comment that I made yesterday about the Eagles maybe potentially taking a look at Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator. And everybody on my Twitter page at Dan Sileo Show is like, isn't that a lateral move? No, dingbats. He's not the coordinator in Kansas City. He's not. He's an assistant coordinator in Kansas City. Lateral move? He's not the play caller. How are people so blind to that? They actually think that Eric Bieniemy is the play caller in Kansas City and the architect of putting design plays together? You're out of your mind. He's not. Eric Bieniemy is going to interview for the same job in Washington, D.C. Why would he go to Washington and not Philly? Same job. But it's not the same job. It's not the same job. He doesn't really have a job in Kansas City. He's a guy who's an assistant to the offensive coordinator who's the head coach. That's what his job is. That's his job description. That's why, hey, figure this out. It's no longer about Eric Bieniemy's past that's getting in the way. How can Shane Steichen, how can Jonathan Gannon spend 2 years in Philly, never having been a coordinator, never having been a coach, as a head guy at any level, get an NFL head coaching job before Eric Bieniemy? Ask yourself that. Only the idiots make it in the race. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got everything to do with perception. Everything to do with perception. Nobody gives a shit what your skin color is any longer. They want the best guy available. So you're trying to tell me no one would hire Mike Tomlin if he got fired in Pittsburgh in 10 seconds? Come on, man. Give me a break. Tony Dungy got a job in 2 hours after he was fired in Tampa. 2 hours. Jim Irsay and Bill Polian called him up and goes, "What do you need?" Had a job in 2 hours. That's a fact. Yeah, I guess the Houston Texans are real racist. They fired, like you said, D'Amico. Come on, man. It's got nothing to do with race. But only the race baiters will make it into race. It's got everything to do with the fact no one believes he's the coordinator in Kansas City or has anything to do with Patrick Mahomes. It's the only way he doesn't have a job. But yet he's interviewing in in Washington for the same job. And yet people on my Twitter are going, it's a lateral move. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's where you have your race bait. That's race baiting. Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job as a head guy because of his past, and no one believes him. No one believes him to the extent that he calls plays. He doesn't. Eric Bieniemy had nothing to do with the second half of that Super Bowl. Zero. Why should I give him a head coaching job? At least Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen had something to do with the Eagles' success all season long. Bieniemy had nothing to do with it. Actually, in the end, being under Andy Reid is a curse to Eric Bieniemy. He's got to leave. He's got to leave. Why not Philly? And so, everyone's like, Sam Howell. Really? How do you know Derek Carr doesn't land there? How do you know Aaron Rodgers doesn't land there? How do you know that they're going to, hey, that's a good public thing they're going to say, Sam Howell. It's the right thing to say. Why would you diminish somebody who you might want to trade later on as you get closer to the trading deadline? Someone goes, no thanks. So you'd rather sit there with those shitty quarterbacks you have in Washington. Really? No thanks. No thanks. You don't have a quarterback, a redeeming quality of anybody in that building in Washington, D.C. Shit, man. I'll take anybody. I'll take the backup in Baltimore. I mean, Eric Bieniemy, the more he sits in Kansas City, he'll never get a job. He'll never get a job. And then you put Bieniemy in the division with the Eagles. Giants are going to get better. Washington's going to get better. I think Dallas gets worse. Come on, man. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got everything to do with perception. No one believes him. It's probably, I'll tell you what, he's never really had a sniff. Why? Because he's black? Or because nobody believes he's the play caller? What do you think it is? All right. I got a list of candidates for, and by the way, let's do this here first. What coordinator do you think that the Eagles have lost will be felt the most. Okay? You tell me. You tell me, what coordinator do you feel will have the biggest impact on the Eagles in 2023? Jameson says Shane Steichen. Go Sixers, go. Neither. DC, Shane. They should at least the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. They were part of the journey. That's what got them those jobs. And they're analytical guys. You know, these owners now and front offices and general managers want to work with people who work with analytics. Okay? These old school general managers and these old school defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators, that's a thing of the past. You're not going to see those old school guys hired anymore. Guys, you need to be more progressive. Okay? You need to be more progressive. Shane deserved to get hired. Did he? You think he was that great a play caller? Boy, I don't. I think most of that stuff was all Jalen Hurts. RPO is not play calling. RPO is more trust. Shane trusted Jalen Hurts. That's why those plays worked. RPO. So you're trying to tell me when Jalen Hurts is taking that ball out and he's seeing the safety or the linebacker, Shane Steichen's in his ear telling him at the split second whether to throw it or keep it? Come on, man. That's decision-making by the quarterback. That has nothing to do with the guy in the sidelines. Zero. Now, they designed this system for Jalen to basically play schoolyard football. And he's smart enough to keep it inside the rails. That's the difference between Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. Jalen keeps it in the room. Those other guys go off the reservation. Jalen Hurts is your OC. Jalen Hurts is your offensive coordinator. He basically is your own play caller. So I don't think Shane Steichen at all. I don't think Steichen's going to be missed 1 second. This is not like Frank Reich. I don't think Shane is missed at all. Your offensive coordinator's Jalen Hurts. It's not Shane Steichen. Fundamentally, how can that be in an RPO system? He can't be the play caller. Jalen, watch this. You see what True down here says? Hey, man, Jalen Hurts got Shane Steichen paid. He sure did. Jalen Hurts put the work in. Jalen Hurts did the studying. Jalen Hurts understood the RPO. Jalen Hurts knew. Can I tell you the biggest thing that I think Jalen Hurts did this year? And again, I'll tell you something. This has got nothing to do with ability. Jalen Hurts worked on all the things this year that had nothing to do with ability and had everything to do with not making the shitty mistake. He protected the ball. He read his keys. That's film work. It takes no athletic ability to be prepared. Jalen was so prepared for every game. That's why we never really saw a bad football game from him all year, because he was prepared. He knew what a team could and couldn't do. That's why the Chicago game had me perplexed a little. You were throwing the ball against a football team that was 31st against the run. You're trying to protect your guy as you're getting closer to the postseason. What do? They get him banged up in an RPO. I'm like, why? There's no point to that. You basically should have ran the 49er game plan at Chicago. That's what the Bills did. The Bills ran the ball on them for 235 yards. I think Josh Allen had like 140 yards in that game throwing. The situational play calling to me at the end of the season by the coaching staff, I thought was a little loose, and I thought it was a little off the reservation. Okay? Here's some candidates. Let's start on the offensive side. Boy, is Brian Johnson sitting in a good place now. He's known the guy since he was 4 years old. You're going to have to keep him there because I'll tell you what, wouldn't shock me if Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon have both made a play for the guy. And I don't know what the parameters are around assistant coaches, but you got to get permission to speak if you're under contract. So you just can't bring a guy with you unless you're giving him an additional role of assistant head coach. Here's what the Eagles do. The Eagles say that Brian Johnson will be the assistant head coach / offensive coordinator. Nobody can talk to him. Nobody can talk to him. You can't, unless you're giving him a head job, that's the next step. That's why they add that additional tag. You know why? Because the NFL has a rule on assistant coaches. You can't really make lateral moves unless given permission by the organization. And that's what Andy Reid has given Eric Bieniemy. He's given him permission to seek other opportunities. By the way, they want him back. I put Eric Bieniemy's name on this list as an offensive coordinator candidate. Okay? I mean, I put his name in there. Would I put Matt Nagy? Maybe. Nagy's a heck of an assistant coach. Remember something. Don't be jaded by an assistant coach getting a head job and sucking. There's been a lot of assistant coaches who just can't handle being a head coach and are great. I think Lovie Smith is a great assistant coach. I don't really think I think Jim Caldwell is a good head coach. I think Lovie's spotty. Okay? But as a defensive coordinator, he's spectacular. Lovie's a good coach. Head coach, you know? Hey, Nathaniel Hackett. I think Nathaniel Hackett's a good coordinator. Head coach, obviously not. Same with Wade, too, right, Sixers? Wade Phillips is an assistant coach. He's spectacular. As a head guy, marginal. Marginal. And certain guys know who they are. Jeff Stoutland's not going to be a head coach. Jim Johnson was never going to be a head coach. You know why? They knew who they were. And for the record, how good a head coach was really Buddy Ryan? How good a head coach? He had such a great and dominating defense. He could care less about the offensive side. He just basically said this, hey, Randall, do what you want to do. Win games. We're good. Never had the money to put in the O-line. They really didn't do anything creative-wise. It was all Randall, man. I mean, Buddy in Arizona. I mean, right? Buddy in Arizona. Buddy was a great coordinator. Head coach. Rex, too. Absolutely. Rex, too. So I think this is very simple. Brian Johnson, elevate him, assistant head coach, give him a bump in pay, obviously, pay him about $3 million. You're going to have to. And he's going to be one of the new hot candidates that will get an opportunity to become a head football coach in National Football League. I got to give this, too, to the Eagles, man. I'll tell you one thing about the Eagles coaches. This goes back to Howie and goes back to Jeffrey Lurie. Look at the guys that are in the league now, general manager-wise and head coaching-wise. Andrew Berry's the general manager of Cleveland. Joe Douglas is the general manager of the Jets. Assistant GM, Andy Wall in Pittsburgh. Now you've got Steichen as a head coach. You've got Gannon as a head coach. You've got Reed as a head coach. You've got Doug Peterson as a head coach. Shit, you even got Chip Kelly as a head coach with UCLA. All these coaches that have been in the building, all are now head guys or have been head guys. Pretty damn impressive. Even Chip has done a nice job with UCLA. Even Chip. I mean, they're not USC, but they're not bad. They're better than what they were when he took them over. All these coaches and front office personnel people have elevated their game. Frank Reich, right. Frank Reich, head coach, Carolina. This is all from the Philadelphia Eagle tree. I'll tell you something. Whoever gets the coordinating jobs in Philadelphia is your next candidates to be head coach somewhere. Even though they wore their welcome out. Doug, division champion. Andy Reid, Hall of Fame. Chip Kelly, Pac-12 Coach of the Year. Howie Roseman, Executive of the Year. Pretty good. This all goes back to the Eagle management. Management is great in Philadelphia. Look at their track record. People who leave Philly have great success when it comes to being general managers or it comes to being head coaches. Or I should say maybe great opportunities for success. It's a great organization. Look at the Eagle organization compared to the Cowboy organization. I mean, nobody. Jason Garrett? Really? You're going to hire him? Look at the bums they had. You know why? Because Jerry doesn't want to develop coaches or front office. Who has ever come out of the Cowboy personnel department and gone somewhere else and developed the football team? The Eagles have good people in the front office. That's what the Giants used to have. Under Jerry Reese and Tom Coughlin, okay, and Wellington Mayer, they used to have really great people in that front office. They're getting back to that. I think now the guy they hired from Buffalo and along with the head coach, Brian Dable, they're getting back to that. It's got to start with front office and management, and that shit all trickles down. The Eagles know what they're doing when they're hiring. I'll give Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie this. They make great hires. You know, you may not like the press conference. Shit, I went back and looked. You all hated the Andy Reid hire. Andy who? This guy's a fat quarterback coach up in Green Bay. You guys took a shit on him too. I guess it's the nature of the beast when you do that because you never heard the guy's name. You shit on people. Andy who? Nick who? Sounds like a pizzeria in South Philly. Now you're like, wow. So when they make these hires, I do think they do their due diligence. I do think they follow protocol when it comes to the Rooney Rule. Because you know why? I think the front office is always looking for the right guy. Why should they knee-jerk right now? They got time to evaluate. Let them do their job. I say this when it comes to Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. If it takes you a month or 2 months to hire a coordinator, so be it. You know why? You've always landed on the right guy. If they were fucking up and not landing on the right guys, then we could sit here and bitch on it. And until they, like I said, Chip didn't work out. He did have a winning record in Philly, and he's not doing bad at UCLA. He just wasn't an NFL guy. Okay. Neither was Nick Saban. Neither were so many guys that tried to make that leap. Steve Spurrier wasn't an NFL guy. I trust him. I trust them to make the right hires as coordinators. Here's the defensive guys. I put a list together. These are guys that I like that are around the league. Lovie Smith, a lot of you guys like him. Does Lovie want to do it? You know, Lovie's got 2 years on his contract remaining at $9 million a year. Would you come take a coordinator job? Or would you sit back with $9 million in your pocket. I think this comes down to the love of the game. When you want to take a year off and at least sit back and kind of like recharge, kind of the same way that Doug Peterson did, right? Just recharge. Or do you want to get back into it? Some guys want to get right back into it. Look at Frank. Frank went right back into it. He was owed a boatload of money. Shit, he had 3 years on his deal remaining at $9 million. He got right back into it. David Tepper and Jim Irsay worked the deal, and he's right back in the game. You guys keep bringing Seth Joyner's name up. Why do you want Seth Joyner as your defensive coordinator? By the way, Seth will be on next Tuesday. I love Seth Joyner. No shade on Seth on what I'm going to say, but why do you guys want Seth Joyner as your coordinator? Why would you want him? Because it reminds you of Buddy Ryan? Those days are gone, folks. That style of defense is gone. It's gone. Okay? You can't play defense like that anymore in today's game. Not with today's rules. Intensity, details, those are all true. Joyner's tough, true. His heart, okay? And by the way, for the record, I have absolutely no problem with Seth Joyner being the defensive coordinator, never having been a coordinator before or really an assistant coach before. I have no problem with that. If you could give Jeff Saturday the head coaching job in Indianapolis like that, I don't have a problem with a guy who's actually a guy who's better than that. I have no problem. If you could do it for Jeff Saturday, you can do that for Seth Joyner. I have no problem. Hey, Steve Nash was never a head coach. They gave it to him. Steve Kerr was never a head coach. He had been an assistant with Popovich, and he had been around Jordan. I get it. There was a little bit of a climb there for him, so I understand it. But remember something. The Golden State Warriors hired Steve Kerr out of the broadcast booth. Do you want to know something else? I mean, Pat Riley was hired by the Lakers to run Showtime. He was the assistant on the broadcast team for the Lakers. Pat Riley was a broadcaster when he got the Laker job. He was a broadcaster. As a matter of fact, he was like co-head coach with Jerry West. Then Jerry didn't want to do it, and they gave it to Riley, and the rest is history. 5 titles. So I don't have a problem with Seth, but here's the problem. Eagle management doesn't want that attitude in the building. They don't want that adversarial relationship that they had with Doug Peterson. Seth is like Doug. Why would they want to walk back over that bridge? Why would Howie want to be in an arm wrestling match every Sunday with Seth? Because Seth is going to have his ways, and he's going to be set in his ways. And the thing that I probably would see that would give Seth problems is that Seth doesn't have a lot of latitude. You know why? Buddy Ryan didn't have latitude. How about when he punched Kevin Gilbride on the sideline when he was there in Houston? Jack Pardee had to get in between those guys. Remember when Buddy punched him? Buddy wasn't going to take any shit from anybody. Seth's not either. Do you want that in your building? STN goes, the Eagles need this. Why? They got to the Super Bowl with a friendly environment inside the locker room. Would Seth adapt? The Eagles aren't going to adapt. That's evident. They shipped Doug Peterson's ass out of town. They're not changing. Seth would have to change. They're not going to change for Seth Joyner to be the defensive coordinator. They're not going to make, cut side deals with him on, hey, we'll do this. We'll give you more. They're not going to do any of that. See this guy here? He goes like this. John goes, Sills is jealous of Seth. No, you're right. Seth will bend the way the organization wants him to bend. You're right. Another blind Eagle fan. Let me throw this at you here. By the way, I think it'd be a horrible idea to hire Seth Joyner as a defensive coordinator. You know why? Because Seth wouldn't get his way on how he wants to run his defense. They would never let him do what he wanted. If they'll fire Doug Peterson, they'll never hire Seth Joyner. Don't you get it? Doug's a better coach than Nick. They got the lesser coach on the sideline because they don't want that attitude. Hey, would I play for Seth? Absolutely. Do I think Seth Joyner would be a great DC? I do, but not in Philly. It's not going to happen. Seth would never be able to run the scheme and the defense he wanted. He would never. Do I think he's got a great defensive mind? Absolutely. Do I think he'd be a great coordinator? If given the ability and autonomy to do what he wanted, yes. Tone goes, if these people think Howie would bring in Seth, they are fools. It'll implode in 6 months. It has nothing to do with Seth as the man. Howie runs the show, period. Amen. This is Howie Roseman's show. This isn't Nick Sirianni's show. This isn't going to be Howie Roseman / Seth Joyner's show. Don't you understand that? He doesn't share. He fired the guy who wanted to share it with. And guess what? You fired a head coach who's better than the head coach you have now. Actually, in the last 3 head coaches you've had, 2 of them you fired. One of them's going to the Hall of Fame, and the other one's building a Hall of Fame resume. You fired both of them. Andy Reid and Doug Peterson. This is Howie's show. Always has been, always will be. That's why a guy like Lovie Smith, that doesn't fit the makeup of Howie. God forbid. I don't see how you guys throw these crazy names out. Vic Fangio, never. Now, he likes his input, obviously. Wouldn't shock me if they made kind of a play for Vic before he took the Miami Dolphin gig. STN goes like this. Here it is right here. See what STN said right there? See that right there, Tone? Howie wants to win. STN, Howie wants to win Howie's way. Not your way. Howie Roseman wants to win his way. And his way has been successful. 2 Super Bowl appearances in 5 years. Most wins in the NFC East since 2000, combined on the rest of the teams. Picking the right quarterback, potentially. Being the most dominant team in the NFC East. He's got the resume. And he's built up the equity with the owner. He's going to win those arguments. He's got to go. Okay. Jeffrey Lurie trust Howie Roseman more than he trusted Doug Peterson. That's why Doug was given his walking papers. And you think Seth Joyner's coming in? Give me a break. Howie wants to win his way, not your way. I got another guy. Now, I think Denard Wilson is probably going to get the job because they're going to hire from within. Why would they hire Wilson? Anybody have an idea? Why would they hire Wilson, one of the assistant coaches in Philadelphia? Why would they hire Wilson as the coordinator? Why would they hire him? Why would they hire him? Why would they hire Denard Wilson as the coordinator? You guys have an idea? Why would they hire him? Comp picks? Cheap? Picks? Company man? Howie hired him. Howie thinks now that he's got the new bloodline on coaches in the NFL and general managers. Howie wants to develop another NFL head coach. Howie hired this guy. Nick Sirianni didn't. This is a Howie guy. You want Howie to go outside the building on somebody he brought in on a football team that just took a team to the NFC Championship and think he's going to go out of house? Give me a break. Both coordinators are going to be elevated from within. They're not going out of house. They're not going to want to upset the apple cart. They like the environment in their building at the NovaCare Center now. Why would they? Why would you change that? Why would they change that to bring Lovie Smith in and put in a whole new environment and by the way, personally, it makes more sense because you still don't know what's going on with free agency. So the guy in the building, Wilson, will go along with exactly what the personnel department and the general manager's office is going to do. He'll go along right with it. Because to me, if you were going to go out and hire a general manager, or a defensive coordinator, wouldn't you want, with all these free agents, who do you need? I don't need him. I don't want him. I don't need him. I want him. I want him. I don't need him. You get to handpick the personnel in these free agent deals, and you could tell them, but Howie wants to run the room. Sometimes you want to shake things up. Didn't they shake things up at 4 wins? They fired the coach and got rid of the quarterback. I don't know about shaking shit up, but that seems to be the biggest shakeup you can get. Lovie Smith makes no sense. Why would you bring in Lovie Smith when your defense was one of the top units and you got a guy on your staff you trust? What does Howie Roseman know about Lovie Smith? Has he ever been around him? Has he ever coached with him? Come on, man. And he's not an analytical guy. He's not. And by the way, how about the shit job that he did on the Houston Texans? Winning that final game and going for it on 4th down. Sticking it to the organization. You know, if they lose that game, they get the number 1 overall pick. Instead, Chicago gets it. You think that's a good sign that Howie would sign that guy, knowing that that guy's got a little bit of get back in him in case something goes sideways in Philly? Come on, man. Use your brains. Anybody but Gannon. All of a sudden, a parting gift from Lovie Smith out the door. I think we'll win this game and not have the number 1 overall pick. Give it to Chicago. Yeah, that's a guy Howie would sign as defensive coordinator. Yeah, sounds right. Somebody who would backstab the organization. Yeah, that sounds right. So so you guys think that Howie Roseman will sign a guy who effed over the Texans in the final game of the season for the number 1 overall pick? Yeah, classic. Yeah. Yeah. Look at Steve. Lovie doesn't take any shit. Well, he's out then. Because you got to take shit in Philly. If you're a coach, you got to take shit in Philly. That's why Lovie and Seth are not on the list. Denard Wilson, Eagles, probably gets the job. Brian Johnson probably gets the job. Look, I threw Mike Zimmer's name. Mike's an old school guy. He's a good defensive-minded guy. He's really good. I just don't see a fit there. Eric Washington. He worked with Sean McDermott, assistant head coach. He's a D-line coach in Buffalo. He kind of has the same fundamentals that Sean McDermott has defensively. Sean McDermott is a former assistant coach. In Philadelphia, there's a relationship with Sean McDermott and Howie and the owner. They're all friends. That could be a call if they're going. This is maybe going out of house. Someone like Eric Washington, young, analytical, works with the front office, very good. Jared Mayo, Patriots linebacker coach. I'll tell you something about the assistant coaches that have been in New England. They're all great assistants. They're not great head coaches. I would never hire a person from Bill Belichick's coaching tree as a head coach. As an assistant coach, I would. Name me one coach he's ever developed. Bill O'Brien, and then who? Charlie Weiss? Romeo Crennel? Name me a guy that has been on that coaching staff in all those years up there where you went like this. Brian Flores is probably the best. Brian Flores and Bill O'Brien are probably the best. The rest of those guys are turds as head coaches. I would never hire a Bill Belichick assistant coach to be my head coach if I owned an NFL team. There's no track record of massive success. None. Shit, Bill Parcells has more success with assistant coaches who have been on his tree. I'll tell you, somebody else does too. Jay Gruden. He had both Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. He had the guy, Matt LaFleur. They were all in Washington. Guess who hired him? Jay Gruden. Hired all those assistants. Those were all his guys. Mike Vrabel did not coach in New England. He played in New England. He never was an assistant coach in New England for Bill Belichick, ever. That's a misnomer. Mike Vrabel played in New England. Shanko's question, do you think we go downhill next year or elevate? Good question. I'll get to that. So I got Jared Mayo on this list. This is if they go out of the organization. Sean DeCisa, Seahawks, assistant head coach. Love this guy. One of the top resumes, and he's a young dude. And I love the way Pete Carroll does defense. Pete Carroll has a lot of great assistants that have gone on to do really great things. Okay? A lot of great things. So again, look, I think they're staying in-house. But personally, there's a lot of great coordinators and a lot of great candidates that are out there that could take this job. But this is going to come down to Howie. This is Howie's show. Nick has no input in this. Yeah, he may have a couple comments and maybe a couple suggestions. But this is going to be Howie wrote. Who can Howie work with? Not who can Nick work with. How many people believe truly in your heart that Nick Sirianni gave up the play calling duties? How many people believe that? Do you really think that Nick Sirianni had any kind of say when he was 2-5 in Philly and people were screaming for his head, that he had any equity to go like this? Hey, I'm just going to give up the play calling. Or do you think that was a front office decision? That's a front office decision. That was a front office move. That was Howie. That was Howie. They forced the hand. And get this, it was once again, personnel decisions by the Eagles. What did Shane Steichen do since play caller? He's 26-4. Do you understand that Shane Steichen, not counting the Super Bowl, won 26 of 30 games as the offensive coordinator? You're going to get a job with that number. Totally Howie's world. Okay? Somebody asked the question, do I think that you guys will take a step back? Not because of your coaches, but because of free agency. Do I think, here, now I'm going to be fair here before I say that. Do I think the Eagles take a step back? Here, well, let's look at the landscape. Let's do this. How much better do you think? Because remember something, to get to a Super Bowl, you first have to win your division. Win your division. Build your team around your division. Then you could start talking Super Bowl again. Will the Eagles be better than Dallas? By far. Dallas is looking up. Washington, who knows what the owner is going to do in a couple months? Who's the new owner going to be? What direction are they going to go? Are they going to fire Ron Rivera? Are they going to fire Jack Del Rio? What are they going to do? Are they going to hire Eric Bieniemy? Maybe Bieniemy gets the job in Washington as the head coach. That's why, personally, guys, I think they're bringing Eric Bieniemy in for the new owner. And they'll fire Ron Rivera, and they'll fire Del Rio, and they'll put Bieniemy in there as head coach. Okay? I think it's kind of like a safety valve for whoever the new owner is. But Washington, they're going to get better. The Giants are going to get better. But how much better are they going to be than will the Eagles beat the Giants next year? Yes. Will the Eagles beat Washington next year? Probably 1-1 again. Will they beat the Cowboys? Yeah, I mean, they're favored to go 2-0 against them. Say they're 1-1. Okay. So again, you're 4-2 in the division. You're still going to win it. Then you look around the landscape. What does Aaron Rodgers do? If Rodgers goes to the Jets or the Raiders, who's left in the NFC that threatens the Eagles? The 49ers. I think Minnesota takes a step back. Who else? Let's see. If Derek Carr goes to New Orleans, I don't know, maybe. Green Bay, maybe. But again, I'm talking if Rodgers leaves, who in the NFC? 49ers, the Seahawks? I don't think the NFC is going to get that much better if the Eagles take a dip in talent on the roster. So, do I think the Eagles are going to – watch this. The Eagles could probably have a better season next year and not have the same record. Have you ever seen that before? I've seen it before. Because you're playing tougher teams. Detroit, Rams if healthy, okay. Carolina maybe, depending on what they do at quarterback, but it's going to be a rookie or a free agent. So I would say this to you. Do the Eagles really have to make a ton of moves to still remain 1-2 right there with the Niners? Niners still have to figure out that quarterback. So you'd say Philly still won. And depending on what happens in Green Bay. Shit, you got the Bears talking about potentially packaging up Justin Fields to draft Bryce Young and then send Fields somewhere. You got a lot of teams in the NFC. So say the Eagles lose 4 or 5 free agents and quality free agents. Is that still going to dip them down enough? Plus, Hurts is going to continue to get better. You're not losing any of your wideouts. You're not losing your tight end. Your running back, I'd have gave that guy a Greyhound ticket back from Glendale. He sucked so bad. You know, of all the guys that I was disappointed in the Super Bowl, he's the biggest disappointment from the Super Bowl for me was Miles Sanders. What a disaster. Completely disappointed in him. I wouldn't even offer him a contract. I'd let him walk out the building. Wouldn't even give him the satisfaction of talking to him about a contract. So to me, guys, how much better do you think the NFC is going to get? Do you think they close the gap on the Eagles? Do you guys think anybody – the 49ers are going to be the team with the best roster, but you're going to have the better quarterback. They're not losing anybody. Okay? You're going to lose people. You're probably going to – it's going to – hey, you're going to kind of be like Kansas City and Philly. You're going to have the better quarterback, okay? Like Kansas City had the better quarterback than you, and you had the better roster. Well, the better quarterback won that Super Bowl, not the better roster. And you're going to have the better quarterback than San Francisco. But San Francisco is going to have the better roster because they're not losing anyone. They're going to give an extension to Bosa. Look at the NFC. I don't see the NFC catching Philly yet. So when a person goes, Dan, do you think we take a step back? You might take a step back in wins, but this is not about winning rounds and winning games. This is about getting to the Super Bowl. If you have 2 less wins, do you care? If you get back to the Super Bowl and you're in Las Vegas, Super Bowl's in Vegas. Do you care? I wouldn't care. Brian, I'm going to get to that here in a minute. Right? So, I was sitting there going, well, man, the Eagles are going to be a completely different team. But then I started thinking, you know what, though? Okay, so say they lose Sayamalo. And it looks like you're going to. Because he's going to get $12 million in the open market. He's going to start at 95% of the teams that offer him a contract. And he's going to make big money. He's going to sign a big-time extension. You're losing him. You're not keeping him. That's a shame because he's good, even though I thought Chris Jones kicked his ass. The problem you have now is if Kelsey retires. So the middle of your offensive line is gone. And to sit here and say that Cam Jurgens is going to put Pro Bowl effort in there, that's a reach. That's a reach. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying he won't. I don't know. We're talking potential. Remember what I tell you all the time about potential. That's something you haven't done yet. Every time I hear someone use the word potential, that to me is a red flag because potential hasn't been seen yet. That's a guess. That's a guess. Yeah, Patriot. Cam Jurgens is a raw talent. That's potential. It's got everything to do with maybe. That's not a given. I got some really sad news for you about one thing, though, that Howie completely failed on. And we're going to do that at the top. And it wasn't, I've been telling you about this particular thing that Roseman was terrible at last year. And now other people are picking up on it. And I'm going to tell you what he was brutal at last year. And it could affect the team's success coming into 2023. Okay? And by the way, I had a couple conversations with some people at Clutch. I might as well tell you now, just so you know. Tone, here we go. Hey, Trev, what you doing, brother? Clutch Sports and the Philadelphia Eagles over the last few days and a few days prior to the Super Bowl in the bye week have begun contract negotiations with Jalen Hurts' people. And the Eagles have put a preliminary, what is it called, framework down. And it's between 45 and 50 million bucks. So there's a framework. And just like I said, I don't know what the framework is, but it's between 45 and 50 million. Clutch has been in preliminary talks these last few days. Jalen's answered the questions appropriately, as any pro would. But Clutch Sports and the Eagles are putting, I want to get the exact wording down, framework for a contract extension with Jalen Hurts between 45 and 50 million per. They told me to make sure that I got the exact language down. Clutch working on the framework of a $45 to $50 million per year deal. I don't know what years are. I don't know if it's going to be back-ended, front-ended. I don't know any of that. Okay? I don't know any of that. I just know that there's been conversation. The bye week and yesterday, and it'll probably continue on. Here's because I think the Eagles wanted to get to the table right away before Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson set the market. And I think this is the appropriate thing to do. And that's why the conversation has been quiet. Because you know why? When you're working on something and you're close to getting it done, you don't want details getting out. I just know the number. It's between 45 and 50. And it's the framework of the deal that they're working on. So again, when Jeffrey Lurie comes out and says, this is not money driven, you should have read the tea leaves there. This is framework driven. What's the framework of the deal going to look like? Okay. Yeah, Joseph, I agree with that. Because I think I've got a little insight on that. I think Burrow's conversations are starting at 55 to 60 million. I already know Lamar Jackson because I know the mother down in South Florida. The Ravens have a $51.3 million deal on the table for Lamar. Lamar wants guarantees like the guy in Cleveland. See, that's the thing holding all of this up right now. It's not you guys are looking at the wrong deal. It's not the Mahomes deal. You know why? It's team friendly and there's a boatload of off ramps. There's no off ramps in Cleveland with Watson's deal. All 230s guaranteed. Nobody wants a Mahomes deal. Mahomes is already under market value at $45 million. Shit, the guy in Arizona just got 46-1. This is about framework. I've got more details on it. I'm going to hit on that and also some interesting stuff on what people are saying about Howie Roseman. Hit the like button. Don't forget, Merrill Reese, who has been so kind to me throughout the entire season, he will join us in the 5:30 hour or at 5:30 in the 5 o'clock hour, third hour of the program, and we'll get his thoughts on what he saw in Super Bowl 57. Got a boatload of stuff to hit on here. We appreciate you coming aboard. I got more details on what Clutch and the Eagles are working on, the framework of the deal. Again, I have very little details. You guys are talking to me about like bonuses and such. I don't know that. I'm not going to lie to you. I only know that they've been talking in the bye week and these last few days. Hour 2. Keep it here on the National Football Show.